Welcome everyone in the room, but also welcome our online audiences who are watching live online, and also the talk will be available in the coming weeks. We're here to talk today about the Tempest, and if you were here on the earlier talk at 3 o'clock with Tawny from the Imaginarium, you would have got a snippet, a moment of the collaboration that we'll discuss in this session. It's a great thing to be on a panel with people that you've seen every day for the past 2 years and be able to share something that you've been really excited about for a very long time. This Tempest is Shakespeare's last play. It's his innovation play, and throughout 2016, from Stratford-upon-Avon, we've had a series of events that have celebrated and highlighted 400 years of storytelling. And as Tony referenced in the previous talk, these stories have adapted over the last 4 centuries and are still strong today, still strong in our society today. We're in a unique and exciting position where we will perform the Tempest as the last piece of the 2016 programme. And it's a collaboration, a unique collaboration between Intel, the Imaginarium, and the Royal Shakespeare Company. It comes from a moment where Greg looked back at what that play meant. Greg is our artistic director, and what the themes of that play were exploring. And in those plays, there's a scene called The Mask, which is an innovation moment within the play. And we approached Intel to explore what that would look like, having been inspired by their work with the Leviathan in 2013, and also their work as a technology company leading the way. We were then introduced to Imaginarium. I'd like to introduce the panel. Ben Lumsden is head of studio at the Imaginarium. Hi. Intel, sorry, you are Intel. Tawny Schlieski is director of client research at Intel, and Pete Griffin is production manager at RSC and the production manager for the Tempest. I'd like to hand over now to Mark, who's going to run a short video to share with you how we will use some brilliant new emerging technologies to tell a story.
Getting his skeletal information that day. Today is an interesting and exciting day because it's the first time that we see the 3 strands come together. We've got the RSC actors, we've got the Imaginarium studio and stage and crew here, and we've got the Intel technology all converging into one place for the first time. We're in good shape, I would say. The project's been going really, really well for the past 18 months, and there are still a lot of challenges.
How's the little blue man looking? I've been here once before, and it's basically a chance for me to get in the suit and play around with the avatar and see what sort of things we can come up with before rehearsals start properly in 4 months' time.
The priority really for these 2 days is exploration rather than exposition. It's really about trying to engage with something that's absolutely at the heart of this process, which is the actors integrating with the technical wizardry, if you like.
These are the sort of standard suits that you see, where they stick on the Velcro bobbles. But I'm going to be wearing this, which I think I said looks a bit like a wetsuit. I'm a little bit nervous about meeting Simon Russell Beale because I've never met him before. But obviously I've seen him on stage a lot, and he's a very good actor. So I hope that we get on. Oh, there I am, yeah. Are we not going for a swim?
It's all rather beautiful, but I've no idea how we're going to manipulate it and use it. So it's all very exciting.
And move your arms.
This is the first day when we bring technology and the actors, sound departments and all the amazing wizards from Imaginarium and Intel together. We need to work out what is the logic by which this is going to set up the convention for the audience and which they will understand the production. Being able to use this new technology to find a different means of expression is just great.
He's my closest mate on stage, so we have to work out what I feel about that. I'm very positive, I'm very excited about it, I'm not negative.
Hell is empty, and all the devils are here!
25 years ago or so, I played Ariel in a very beautiful production, actually, at the RSC, and this is my first return back after that to the same play, which is very strange. But I do remember, as Mark says the lines, I remember quite clearly saying those lines myself.
We're still trying to work out the dynamic, the relationship between Prospero and Ariel and the avatar of Ariel, how that ménage à trois works. So it's a bit of a bit confusing at the moment, but I think it's getting clearer and clearer the more we do it. I'm a bit tired now. It's been a long day, energetic day. I feel like we're really getting somewhere. I think we've cracked the way that I can visually have a relationship with Prospero at the same time as the avatar can. But I feel like we've got a fair amount achieved, which is great. And if we can create some sort of extraordinary spectacle, then all the better. What a difference a day makes.
What we were exploring and introduced Ariel, who will be a digital avatar on our stage, and Mark Quarterly, who will be the actor performing. I'm going to hand over to Ben now to show you some of that technology in the room and give you a sense of what we've been exploring.
Hello, everyone. My name is Ben. I'm the head of studio at the Imaginarium, and in the first instance, I'd like to give you a live demonstration of the technology, or some of the technology at least, that we're going to be using for the show, for the Tempest. So Laura, I'd like to ask you to come up to the front here and have a look at the front of the auditorium here. We've been in development for about 5 years now on a top secret app developed in the most part by Andy Serkis himself, where he's been hard at work coding in a cave in the New Forest. And this app, I'm really happy that I can show you for the first time to the world today. It's world exclusive. And this is how we're going to turn Laura as a human into a live CG avatar. Boop. Boop. Beep. Beep. Now I think, let me just check the calibration button, and let's see if that's worked, Cadell. Fantastic, and here's Laura live via Andy Serkis' app as a spaceman on Mars. Okay, it is a little bit fatuous. That's a small joke on my part. But I will go into some detail about this technology now. So what we have here, for those of you who were in the last session, who saw a bunch of Tawny's videos from what we do at home at the Imaginarium in London, typically we use what's called an optical system, where we have an array of cameras, motion capture cameras around a space. So you can have anything from, well, a small system could be 10 cameras. Typically, we have about 50 cameras per system. And the technology there typically works where we are shining near-infrared light at retroreflective points on each of the actors' bodies. In this instance, we have gyroscopes. And we have just a small number of gyroscopes, essentially one per limb. And so we have one on the wrist here, one on the hand, one on the wrist, one on the upper arm, and in that way, it's similar technology to that which you have in your phone, and we are able to understand the relationship between forearm and upper arm, and understand the joint angle between that. So that's what gives us the skeletal retarget. Now, the real fun here is that we can have a play around in 3D space. We're not at all constrained by normal things in normal live-action filmmaking, such as where the camera is. So I have full control with an Xbox controller, and I can sort of move the camera around like this if I want to get close in on Laura and have a look. Now, this world is a virtual world. I can also change the time of the day in the virtual world. So let's move the sun a little bit and have a pan around. I can create, I can dolly, I can crane up and pull back. Let's have a look around. Here we've got a set on Mars. And I can also, because it's in a video games engine, I can do all sorts of fun things, such as open these doors. Here we go. Perhaps we can even go inside. I don't know if you're going to quite get there, Laura, but I can. I'll turn around and see if you're still there.
I can get off this, can't I?
Yeah, let's see. There you go. There you are. You're still outside on the surface. And I can still change the time of the day. Here we go. Yeah. Now, the fun thing about this is that we're not constrained by environments, we're not constrained by characters. So here I can change Laura from being a Martian. Let's go back outside. So here's Laura the spaceman. Now, I'll change character into a goblin. Without a costume change, we can have Laura become a goblin. Now, this goblin, he's got secret powers, and we can decide if we want to make him a heck of a lot bigger. And all of a sudden, we've got a horror film set on Mars with a goblin. And I can shrink him back down again. Or if I really want, I could make him tiny. I'll get him close so that we don't lose him. Hello. Give us a wave, Laura. Hi. So as well as changing the characters, I'll get you back to normal size and reset here. And as well as changing the characters, let's just see. Oh, yeah, we've got a pumpkin Hulk as well. And as well as changing the characters, we can also change the environments. So all of a sudden, perhaps if you come back on stage here, we'll be able to see you in a snow cave. Here we go. And we can go very easily from one world to the next. Now, if you notice, this is a video games engine. This is Epic Games Unreal Engine 4. Now, Epic Games are making really great strides, as are all of the video games engines at the moment. Now, typically the world that we work in, especially in feature films, you're highly constrained by a visual effects pipeline in which you need hours and hours of post-production. Now, that model, I think, many people think, is changing. We think that the advent of video games technology becoming to this sort of quality, where you're seeing that beautiful reflection on the floor, and you can make these real-time changes like you can with the time of day here. We'll be able to, let's see if we can go into the night time and see the moon cross across the sky here. But it's really, the visual fidelity, I would say, is getting to parity with sort of offline visual effects, post-production rendering. And we're going to leverage this technology and the advances that have been coming for quite a while in the Tempest. I think that concludes the live section of our demo. So give Laura a hand, please.
Thank you, Laura. You've been brilliant avatar. And that leads us on to think about, this is technology the gaming technology has been around for some time. But it'd be good for us to talk about how the collaboration has come about and Intel, and how we can push that technology forward with that power and engineering thinking. So, Tawny. No. So, shall we talk about how Intel's interest is in this area?
Yeah, so I had been working in the labs for a number of years, and we played around with a lot of different kind of elemental. We did a lot of prototyping, so we did a lot of sort of experimentation for how can you blend story in the space, what are the new sort of mash of technologies we might want to use, and what is the sort of computation underneath that lets you happen. And we had stood up in the way one stands up a demo, which is it has to run for 35 seconds, and as long as it does, it won. We'd flown a giant whale through CES, which was very charming and rather heart-stopping to make that happen. And then I got a call from Sarah, email actually, saying, it's the Royal Shakespeare Company. Would you like to do this for Tempest? And I just said, yes. And after, in the following seconds, I began to realize that everything we had done up until then, which most of the people have been doing, and there's a ton of experimentation, but most of what we're doing is 35-second demos. And so we're standing things up just long enough to sort of take a picture of it. And it's very much, we were talking backstage, it's very much like that, the early periods of the light bulb. And before there was sort of the Edisonian bulb and it was in all the houses, there were dozens of inventors, all of whom understood and were building the concept, right? There was glass, and you needed a vacuum, and you needed a filament, and then you needed charge. And they all made light. Edison made light for a number of years. Problem was the filament would burn out. And so very much like our demos of the day, it's like your 35 seconds was over. And so realizing that what the Royal Shakespeare Company was actually asking for is a technology that would stand up and that would run 3 hours a show, 8 shows a week over the course of several months was sort of daunting. And it was amazing to find a group of people who were so ambitious and who were going to take all of this experimentation that an Imaginarium has been doing and we had been doing and Epic and all these other really brilliant minds have been doing and say, all right, that's lovely. Now can you actually do it for real? And that was the piece that I think made me just, sort of go all of Twitter. I don't know about Ben, but that was my moment.
And Pete, have we done anything like this before in theatre, but also in this way before?
To my knowledge, it's certainly at the RSC, we haven't done anything like this in this scale. I think with this project, you show technology like this and the sort of demo that Ben's just done and the 35-second clips that Tawny was talking about. You show that to a director and designer, and of course they go flying off in creative, imaginative directions. And my role within the project has been to sort of corral that ambition into slightly more practical and realistic forms that will stand up for 8 shows a week over a 3-hour show. So I think, stuff like this with motion capture in live performance has been happening to a certain extent, but not to this scale within theatre and within a classical production. Also, one of our big challenges has been how we actually then deliver those avatars, of course, into a 3D space and onto stage. Because everything we see, whether it be on the internet, on television, on stuff like this, is all on a flat screen. And our theatre space is on 3 sides, 3 levels. So that's been quite a challenge. I think I wouldn't go so far to say we definitively solved it, but we've come up with a solution this far.
And we've had to work in a different way, haven't we, using different ways of collaborating in terms of our traditional theatre-making processes as well.
Yeah, there's been a lot more collaboration with supply companies of video servers and projectors. Everyone we've approached has sort of gone, their first response has been, wow, that's really interesting, that sounds really exciting. Second response has been, why? And then the third one is, okay, yes, how do we help you achieve this? And from my experience, I've sort of been involved in 60-odd shows, theatrical shows up to now. And with those shows in the past, one always sort of comes across new challenges, but invariably you can sort of refer back to other productions and other company productions. With this, it's been quite a challenge because there isn't a point of reference, and you know that's been the most exciting, or one of the most exciting things about it.
And riffing off that point, Pete, because there's a lot of firsts for all of us as collaborators. Tawny, we've talked a lot in the past about there being like 1,000 firsts, tiny firsts in this piece that come together. From your perspective, what are those new compute or technology firsts from your?
So one of the things that I've found really interesting is that we have this combination. We have a bunch of just sort of raw CPU power, which Intel's actually quite good at. And what my team sort of did is get the largest box, by which Pete knows, I just literally mean the largest box, with the most number of slots, and I sort of just pounded as much computation as I could into the box, and then added enough fans to deafen everyone in the room, and then packed any space I had left with memory, and said, what could this do? And what we really found is that a lot of what's been going on right now, especially sort of in the consumer space, we've sort of found as a collective enough compute, right? We answer our email and we need it to run, and so we sort of have these little mixes that we put together. We're like, that'll do. And what a lot of the things we're doing here, we're in a space where more capability really does matter. And so if you can have more computation, you can make things prettier, you can make more things move, you can make them move more rapidly, you can go in real time. But in some respects, what we are trying to solve is we sort of like time jumped ahead and got a jet engine, and then brought it back. 2 years ago, we sort of were putting a jet engine in a wagon. And the problem that we had is we would turn on the jet engine, and it was great for the 3 seconds before the wagon disintegrated. And so a lot of what we've been doing is sort of figuring out a way to use all that compute without just melting the software and the hardware itself, which I've melted more than a few of those. At Sundance, we would take our machines and put them outside in the snow in a bag. It was like 20 degrees Fahrenheit, sorry, I don't know. It was cold. And we'd have to take them out there because if we didn't every 15 minutes, we actually fused them. So after doing a couple of those, we had to put a pretty hard timer on, put them outside. And so that's kind of a lot of what we're working on, is just those little bits and pieces. It says, I know we can do all this, but can we actually make it all work? All the parts exist, but can we actually screw them together in a way that won't melt?
And that feels like it's coming together. You've got to know Ariel really well through your process. And is it fair to say, to have that opportunity to work from the character at the very beginning and conception to the final output has been a really interesting learning experience as well at the studio?
Absolutely, yeah. So I'd say, there's so many exciting bits about the project, but one you highlight there, which is that at the Imaginarium, being able to go all the way from character concept, 2D artwork, Sylvia, our character designer, working hand in glove with Stephen, the designer of the show, really getting the best possible look for Ariel, and taking that all the way through to the final output is exciting and a little bit new for us. We did some for the Coldplay music video, but generally, certainly studio side, in our short history of 4 years as an entity, generally we've been doing sort of dot tracking, and a client such as a video game or a movie will come to us with an asset, if it's the Hulk or if it's a first-person shooter with a gun, and then we have to put the motion onto that. That's one thing, and there's an art form to that, an artistry to that, but it's been really exciting to to go all the way from concept to seeing the final fully realised result.
And with theatre, with gaming film, there are different processes at the heart of them. Theatre being very different to how you've worked previously with film and gaming. I'm thinking of how we've developed that character and how that character has evolved.
Yeah, I think a huge amount is, for us, a big learning is doing so much in terms of pre-production.
Yeah.
But that's been a learning for all of us, really.
Yeah.
In terms of making this work, we've had to do a huge amount in the front end in order to know that it's going to hold up for the shows, but also be aesthetically pleasing. You have to do all of the work up front, which has been fun. By the time it gets to the stage, it'll have been a good couple of years of hard work. It's going to be...
Yeah, and I think what's also been interesting is sort of learning off each other. In initial character work and renderings, it was going down to the single pixel of shading that, and Stephen Brimson Lewis, the designer, was very much step back, let it. We don't have to go into that minutiae at this point. It's with theatre you have a bit more of a freedom, I think, to be a rougher magic. Was sort of what he put across.
And to give a sense of scale, we're looking at the physicality of Ariel. It's a complex character, isn't it? We've got, am I right in thinking, 360 joints?
Oh, I can't remember. It's 360 odd joints. It's essentially the same number of joints that you have in a human body.
Which is a great achievement in terms of that type of artwork.
Yeah.
But the power behind it is to give us a real-world example, is the equivalent of about having 200,000 files open on your computer at the same time. Yeah. And I think that if we give that scale of computing power, but also to think about just there's the artistic learnings that we've had through this process, but also the technological learnings and what we're capable of in that large-scale space, in that space that demands a spectacle and it demands a character of scale and also detail in terms of its physicality. Pete, I'd like to ask you, we've talked a lot about the pipeline for Ariel and the technology, but this is a live show. It's a show that will run 8 days a week.
Yes.
But also how we present that in, and I would argue that theatre's worked in virtual reality for centuries and we're really comfortable in that 3D space. But we haven't had a digital character in our space before our actors have been live, and how are we going to realise that as a company?
Differently live.
Yeah, differently live.
No, I think that's right. I mean, something Greg always refers back to is puppetry. I mean, we made a very conscious decision early on. We were exploring in the early stages where we put the motion capture volume. Is it on stage? Is it backstage? And Greg sort of very much pointed out he saw it more, and rightly so, I think, as it's puppeteering. So that Mark will be in the suit on stage at the same time as the avatar, which actually shows the live processing. It is working, but also it sort of helps a natural theatrical convention that actually there is a performer here, and that's how he's realised in the same space, but as an avatar.
It's that important emotional connection between actor and actor. So as you were saying, we were talking about the possibility that Ariel the performer, Ariel the actor, could be off stage somehow. And we try and realise a way of Prospero and Ariel specifically being able to have a very strong emotional connection. But Greg was absolutely right that you have to have this interesting sort of three-way relationship in a way that Mark alluded to on the video, Mark who's playing Ariel, where which we discovered that day of the filming, where Mark essentially has a relationship with Simon as Prospero on stage. So you have motion capture performer, actor, playing Ariel, talking directly to Prospero, but Prospero, his relationship is with the CG avatar. So his relationship is with the CG character, and then the CG character is in turn looking back at Prospero. But that sort of construct it is very much like puppetry.
Yeah.
And the brilliant thing about theatre is that we can create rules and get people to believe those things, isn't it?
Yes, I mean, it's a fairly established convention that actually, you know, somebody goes, I can't see you, and everyone accepts it.
Yeah.
You know,
Well, I was just going to say that what this kind of alludes to, and I think it can be hard to sort of break down into the numbers, is that what all of the different pieces of tech, the sort of big backbone that Intel sort of, you know, constructed, that's its, you know, like the steel in the back and the sinews that are sort of the movement that Imaginarium creates, it all has to disappear. And it has to disappear in real time, so that when we watch it, it's just Mark, and we notice Mark to begin with, and then we just see Ariel. And if Ariel, you know, is fritzy or slow or doesn't respond on time, you know, that will breaks our sense. And so really what I think both the technical, what we all are trying to do is really produce that true magic of saying, like, there's enough underneath it that it can just happen. And letting Mark be able to actually perform it, and with no post-production, you know, and no sort of reboots, is sort of the magic that I think is transformative.
I mean, I think the other thing to say is that, yes, Intel provides the processing power to do that, but what's on this project, what's also helped is Intel being able to talk to companies like D3, asking them to write specific software for the production, which allows the...
D3 is the video server.
Sorry, yes, the video server, because we've got 26 projectors in the production, so that's
quite a lot.
Outputting quite a lot. It was certainly more than we're used to.
Yeah.
But we've asked them, and they have obliged to rewrite some of their firmware that helps the tech flow of this, along with Vicon, actually, so that the whole system is working off one common protocol. Now, to go to them as the RSC, they possibly would have obliged, but to actually be able to say, you know, and RSC and Intel has given us an amount of leverage, I think.
Yeah.
So.
And we are opening in November. And
yes.
Pete's very conscious of that.
For the reminder.
But
Here's the paper bag.
Yeah, we've worked for the Royal Shakespeare Company. We've worked in a different way, where we've been working on this for 2 years and quite a long time. But we are now going to enter our mainstream production rehearsals, aren't we? What are you most excited by in that process? Because this has been a really different production from your perspective, hasn't it?
Yes, completely different. What am I'm most excited by? I think I have to equate that with most concerned with as well.
Least concerned with. Most excited by.
Is I think it's what one tends to find with, you know, throughout the rehearsal period is that it doesn't matter how much a show is planned, designed, there's always that spark that comes out of the rehearsal room. That as a production manager, that's the point you always roll your eyes, but actually you know, actually it's right, we've got to respond to that. And with this production, we've always sort of said certain things are going to have to be absolutely set in stone from the word go. You can't change your mind. And Greg's said, yes, absolutely. I know for a fact that come week 2 of rehearsal will be, could we just? Now, hopefully, the way the technical pipeline has developed on this, actually, I can't guarantee it, but I think from what Ben was just demonstrating, using the games engine, it actually gives us a flexibility to be able to go, actually, yeah, we could possibly respond to that. And that's the exciting bit of using this technology within the live environment, actually being able to respond and on a nightly basis to
and building
performances.
Those skills and expertise, because we are drawing upon a huge amount of skills and expertise from all our companies, aren't we, and bringing that together. And for you to have that as a pull out in your rehearsal process.
Yeah, no, it's terrific. But also within that, developing skill bases internally with our technicians as well, which hopefully, to a lesser or greater extent, we can incorporate in future productions as well.
That's great.
So.
I want to sort of start thinking about the future. We touched on rehearsals, but it does strike us that what do we think this means for the future of entertainment, particularly in live performance, because the live and the real time seem to be themes that are drawing out in all our interests as companies. And Tawny, I just wanted to ask you, in first off, what are your thoughts around the future and legacy of something like this and what this might bring?
So I think that if all of us here, we've seen so much change just in the 2 years we've been working, right? And so many fellow travelers doing so many interesting things. I do feel like we're approaching this sort of cresting wave where you'll be able to incorporate these kind of technologies, like you said, more fluidly into more spaces. Because at the moment, as we all know, through the blood, sweat, and tears, this is still very much, this is hard and heavy lifting. This is one bolt at a time, and a lot of prayer to make it happen. But what I'm seeing is that this, you're getting a sort of a fluidity of tools, standardization, I think, movements from the different companies, all who say we want to be able to do this. And I think as that happens, one of the things that I'm most compelled by is this return to entertainment of the actual moment, the gathering together in a very genuine sense, which is to say, we are watching a show tonight at 7. We're not pre-recording it, it's not available in every other form. It is an event which a collection of humans are going to come together and share. And I think being able to empower that moment across different spaces, across different times, and people of different, sort of statuses being able to come together in that space, I think is a really compelling combination of sort of old and new, and I'm excited about that.
That's great.
Well, it's interesting with, touching on the live, you think about the music space and how the fact that live music has had a massive resurgence recently, and I think it's almost the prevalence of media being anywhere at any time. You can live stream a concert, you can download anything on the internet, but it's almost as a reaction to that, the live event becomes more important. And so I think this technology becomes ever more relevant in that space.
One thing that I've noted with your technologies is when we first started working together, and the sort of technologies that we were talking about to the technologies that we're now putting in the show are very different. And one beautiful moment is when I realised, when you said, this is technology you can find on your mobile phone. And for performance capture, the diversity of tools you have is growing, isn't it? And the scale of which is growing.
Absolutely, yeah. There's Kickstarter campaigns for, $1,000 versions of the suit that Laura's wearing today.
Yeah.
And I think a big drive of that is virtual reality as well. We've been doing a lot of development with a glove company for inertial gloves in order to get really decent finger data. And yes, we've been the trailblazers in that, and that's great, and we need it at that time. But within 5 years, perhaps a shorter time period, you'll have a consumer-grade product that will absolutely be as good as that, because everyone wants to be able to see their hands in VR.
And that, I think that's a great understanding for us in the future, the future uses or the future ideas that take it on.
Well, and I was just interrupting you. It also harkens back to Tony's point in the last event, right? Like, you need to empower, right now, the creators who are working on Tempest, it's a small group in a somewhat toasty crucible. But what becomes really interesting is when you can have 1,000 different people making a version of the Tempest, when our little crucible has to compete with all the greatest, most inventive minds that we have never even met yet.
Yeah.
And that becomes really compelling to think about what are they going to make And how are they going to show us up with their thoughts?
That's great. Which leads me to our audience, and if we have any questions. Brilliant. We'll get you a microphone.
Thanks a lot. I just wanted to kind of draw on the day to a certain extent, because the first presentation from Flo at the National Theatre was about transmitting. It was about capturing the stage experience live with an audience, so to capture the experience of being in a live scenario with people in a room enjoying something in a privileged way, but you're getting it transmitted to anywhere on the earth within reason. And that's very exciting. What it seems to me that's happening, two things have happened for me in the 21st century about theatre. One is that there isn't a theatre, it's called promenade theatre, the sort of punch drunks of this world. And the other thing is the theatre is becoming a media lab. It's very specialist. We now need projectors instead of lights, or we need both, in fact. So we rig projectors temporarily and then find we need them again because we're, in Germany they were actually video capturing, they were video mapping on performers as they move across the stage. They change their costumes in real time, pretty sophisticated stuff. The Curious Incident uses that, the Nether, every production now is driving for projection. We're talking about motion capture studios where you might need a media lab on site to go and start motion capturing. We're talking about digital platforms. Will from the BBC talked about, how we capture that use the platform for the 18 to 30-year-old on a mobile. So this is another, impact on the business of what is a theatre. Is the theatre hybrid really changing now? Is the theatre, does it exist in the form that we know it? And does it need to become an entirely different thing? And all I'm doing is reflecting on all the talks we've had today.
You're looking at me, okay. I mean, it is. I mean, I think theatre is evolving, but I think it's always been evolving.
We've always had technology.
I think it's something within the performing arts that, as a group of theatre practitioners, we've always done that. We've looked at the latest technology and actually how we can take that and use it in a different way or use it to our own ends. I mean, you can go right back to lighting, moving lights. Every theatre, or nearly every theatre now, has moving lights to one degree or another. Yes, I mean, a simple answer to your question, yes, I think it is changing, but I think still at the heart of it is the narrative and the performances, and it's just how those are interpreted and displayed, really.
Pete's absolutely right. I mean, candlelight was a technology of its time. It changed form. It changed the form of how we make the work as well. Ship's rigging, we know, as you've seen changes, we know that's got a narrative. And what I think where we're very fortunate at the RSC is that we have texts that have been evolved with technology over 400 years. So we can see that narrative really clearly because we have the same stories. And as much as there's a brilliant narrative within those stories that talks about human nature, that it is always the people of today and how they tell those stories that relate it to today. And I think that where the fracturedness around theatre is happening is what are the digital derivatives of a live experience, and that for us, and what's unique about the Tempest and what we're really, I think, really proud of is that this is a shared experience. This is a place that is temporal. It's a place that will change every night and has the story and the acting at the heart of it. But we are very curious about what these new technologies do for theatre.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's also right to say that what we're doing in incorporating motion capture and digital technology into this production is our interpretation of how to do it. I mean, we're by no means claiming, that that's the be-all and end-all. It's our first go at it, really, and, I'm sure there will be better
It might be in the long term. This is my dream, is that we actually seduce the 18 to 30-year-olds into the theatre space because they realise the power of live performance through actually having streamed it on their mobile devices for 6 minutes, you know, and they realise there is a value in a 90-minute evolving narrative in real time.
I think that our collaborators really want that, and that's a key goal. And that is about where does the experience start. And for us, the experience starts when we launched and we told the world about that we were doing this, our social media campaign, and our audiences, bringing them in to the story, creating that, and working with collaborators that have those audiences, you know, in different ways is so important. It's not just the performance there, that connection starts, is the culture you create around the performance. Ooh, okay, excellent. We're going to go around the room.
Greg Doran in your film mentioned about the mask and the power of... Well, we're actually talking about design here, aren't we? We're an element of design. And I think bearing in mind the fact that our brains are changing with our technologies and accepting that, maybe it's harder for people of a certain age, but accepting that that's the case, I don't think we should worry too much about the idea that the new way of designing is going to stop people realizing, I mean, this is extraordinary because it means they're going to be witnessing the real person making the thing within a real performance surrounded by real people. And I think it's, you know, we get paranoid about technology ruining theatre, but this is a necessary step, it seems to me, because we have to respect the way in which our children's brains and minds and approach to the world and to communication and to art is changing, and we need to keep the standards of the sort of thing that happens at the RSC and the National in line with that, and that's been going on and developing in various ways through all our major entertainments.
Thank you.
What are the questions?
No.
Really good point.
Really good point. Thank you.
Thank you.
I noticed your hand up.
Hello. What to me is very interesting is the immersiveness of virtual reality, especially with those goggles and stuff. And my question would be if you ever thought about a project coming up where the audience gets to break the fourth wall and actually gets to step on stage and maybe even interact. Have you been working in this direction as well?
Yeah, Sarah and I have been talking about that recently. So, absolutely, and I think, to the first question's point as well about what the future could look like. I think you can, from the technology that we've been developing over the last couple of years, it's a very small step to be able to have live streaming interactivity where either you are a part of the play. And you are actually playing a part of the play, or you could be sat in your living room with VR goggles, and there's other people sat around the world with their VR goggles, and you're all absolutely acting the play, and you can choose your avatar. You can, absolutely, we could do that. It's not far off.
I'm conscious that. Oh, okay. We'll take one more if that's all right. And I'm conscious that. We're near the end of our time, but we're around afterwards.
How does the technology affect the rehearsal room that you're about to go into with the other actors? And just out of curiosity, how long is your tech rehearsal going to be?
Not long enough. But they never are. Technology in the rehearsal room is going to be, we're going to be quite selective about how and when we do it. We talked through this with Greg and the actors, that there is a danger of putting too much technology in the rehearsal room and putting that technology in too quickly as well, because by its very nature, it's quite time-consuming and quite diverting, I think. So that there is a schedule within the rehearsal coming together that says, actually, these days we will have the suit in there, we will put a couple of projectors in there, and we will work with selective sort of avatar aerial moments.
But it's sort of 5 days within 12 weeks or something.
Yes, yeah.
It's a small amount, deliberately small.
And as regards the tech period, we've got 2 weeks of technical to do this, and actually the motion capture element is kind of the easy bit within it.
Yeah.
And
I was just going to say, I know, I'll run us over time. I'm completely undisciplined. I would just say the thing to think about in all this, for all of us, as we're thinking about all these new evolutions, and not just what we're doing, but a lot of what's going on in the festival and what I'm sure a lot of you guys are building. For the most part, we're experts in old technology. So we knew how to make films, and we knew how to make theater, and we knew how to make these other things. And we're all sort of evolving to these new transitions. So giving actors who have spent most of their time acting with other fleshy humans rather than with pixelated characters, giving them time to sort of do both. We're all a bit, we sort of have to wade in. And so one of the things that I would just call out to this team that's been delightful is having 2 years to actually wade in, to actually test things and see if they work, and then come back and not just be in this state where we, on Tuesday we set the 5 things we're going to do and we just plow forward. And I think trying to give space for the actors to have that same experience and let them sort of be in that moment and get used to it is great and glorious. So
they're rehearsing just as normal at the moment, just together, and then there's a moment where they're going to divide it.
That's the plan, yes.
I'm sorry we've run out of time, but thank you so much for being a brilliant audience, and your questions and what you've shared was really great. Thank you, Ben, thank you, Tawny, thank you, Pete, and thank you to the Edinburgh Digital Entertainment Festival for having us. It's been brilliant in your first year, and we hope we can come back again soon. That's great. Thank you.
Thank you.